The first thing we're going to do is look at how to work with the actual body geometry, opposed to the simple geometry we looked at last. And we want to find a way to make sure that we can de-intersect this body to leave room for the cloth. So if we come up here and I move the animation a bit forward, maybe here, we can have a look at this shoulder, and we can see that the bicep completely goes through the back, and that won't leave any room for cloth in here. So we have to find a way to de-intersect that. So the first thing I'll do is put down an unpack node. The first thing we want to do is get rid of any polygons that aren't actually going to collide with the clothing. And as we watch this go through, well, obviously the hands and the legs and the back are going to collide, but odds are their head isn't. So what I want to do first is just come in here and go to selection mode and get primitives, and just go ahead and make a selection of the head and blast that away. And I'm also going to add a polycap after that, because we will need a VDB, and we can't have a hole for a VDB. I'm going to pop down a VDB from polygons, much like before. And now that we're on the actual geometry, we really have to work with this voxel size because we want it as large as possible so it goes fast, but obviously we want it small enough so we have enough detail. So I'll just go by a factor of 10 for a second, 0.01, and this still scrubs pretty fast, so that's probably okay for now. Maybe I can go a little bit smaller just to get a little bit tighter around there, but it's starting to slow down a little bit as I scrub through, so maybe half that. All right, first I want to wrangle, much like I did before, and I'll hook it up to the polyfill in the VDB. I'll start the same way I did before, where I want to find out how far inside the body all the points are, so volume sample. And I know that if my distance is less than 0, then I'm going to have to do some things. What direction do I want to move things? I don't just want to say, look at the gradient like I did before, because the problem here is before, when we had clearly two different objects, like those two cylinders, we knew we wanted to push one from the other. But in this case, I want to push both the back away and the arm away. And if I'm just looking at the gradient, well, part of the back is over here, and it might actually get pushed to this side of the arm. And part of the arm is all the way inside here, and this might get pushed out to the back, and it won't give us this nice gap. So what I really want to do is sort of shrink these objects. If I shrink the arm and shrink the back, I'll leave some room for the clothing. Well, what direction can I shrink from? Well, I could use the normal to shrink it. So I need to put a normal node in. So I'll just move this down, add a normal node, and make sure that that's on points. If we're inside the VDB, then my position is going to be minus the normal, and I'll say that's the direction that I want, and then I want it times some normal amplitude. Okay, and hit the button so we have that attribute down here, and I'll just put it at, say, 1, or I'll put it at, say, 0.01 for now. And you can see we're starting to get some movement, but it doesn't quite look right. We are actually carving away this underarm, which is good, but we're also carving all these other parts away. So let's figure out why. First step to do that is to give myself a visualizer to see what it is that I'm carving away. So if I know that I'm under 0 for my distance, I know that I'm intersecting myself, and I could say something like, I'm going to give myself an attribute called intersect and say it's equal to 1. And if I pop down a visualizer, we can see what we're doing. We have a lot of other points that we wouldn't have thought would be intersecting. And the reason they are is because the VDB, the voxel size isn't that small. We are ending up with some points that are sitting inside of this surface. We can also realize that while, yes, I have some points on the arm that are clearly inside this back, there's also some points on this side of the arm that may get thought that they're inside the VDB as well. We need a way to differentiate. So what I can do is, instead of sampling actually at my position, I can sample a small offset away from the position. And that will mean that anything on this side of the arm will get sampled out here, and it won't find anything. Anything on this side of the arm will get sampled in the body, and it will. I can say that I'm looking at a sample position, which is going to be my normal, plus, well, how do I know what's just outside? Well, that's the normal. And again, times some amount. So this is going to be an offset. And now I'm going to sample at that sample position instead. Let's get my attribute ready here. I'm going to look at a little bit of offset. And you can see as soon as I move that off 0, we actually have a change. And if I visualize what my intersect attribute is, that now gets that goes away because I'm sampling a little bit off this surface. If we want to actually visualize what this sample position is, well, that's kind of easy. We can say that the viz sample is going to be just the normal times the offset. Now, why isn't this visualizer including P? Well, that's because the visualizer is already going to be at that point position. We just want to know how much we're moving off the surface. So I can add another visualize node, and I can set it to viz sample, choose a marker and choose a vector, and we can see this is the point we're sampling from. So if I come back here and say my offset maybe is 0.005, you can see now we're sampling just a little bit outside the surface. We've definitely carved away the underarm area, we've carved away some of the hip, but it's real kind of chunky. We can use another node for this. I'm just going to delete this other visualizer here. So I can use a delta mush, and this delta mush is going to smooth this out, but the delta mush is actually going to smooth everything, which is not what we want. We only want to smooth these intersected parts. So again, I can use this intersect attribute for my advantage, and I can say that if the intersect is just above 0, so maybe 0.00, bigger than 0.001, then only delta mush that section. And you can see that this now smooths out just that area. But we're not quite there because there's still this extra part here that doesn't look great. And obviously our visualizer is only those points that were exactly intersected. So I can do one more thing, and I'm just going to add an attribute blur. We'll connect this up to both streams. And the attribute blur, I want to blur intersect. Great, that spreads that out. Maybe I can spread it out a little bit more. My visualizer is looking better, and now when I delta mush, well there, now I've really smoothed out that whole section. Maybe this has even gone a little too far, and I could bring this iterations back in, but really that's up to the animation, and you can just play around with those values and try to see. So now we've left room in the underarms, we left room in the hips, and that's going to make our simulation that much easier to use, and it's going to get rid of sections where the cloth might be stuck in between the arm and the body.